All right, you're welcome to the program. It's Good Morning Nigerian, the network service of the NTA. Yesterday on this program, Kingsley and Yusuf Nadabu were joined by guests who, of course, discussed restructuring and matters arising. Our backgrounder this morning, just to take us to our conversation, will be on excerpt from that conversation.
Now, you need to have a structure of representation and participation that ensures greater engagement and involvement of people at all levels of decision, be that at the federal level, or at the state level, or at the local government level. I'll give you an instance, for example. There are places up till now since 1999, elections have not taken place in part of Nigeria, particularly in Taraba, for example. In Usa and Taku local government, there are territories where elections have not taken place at all since 1999. That is a hotspot of violence and insecurity in Nigeria.
We are in the process of ensuring that the entire Nigerian structure is in our hands. Primary health care is a function of local governments. So if primary health care has failed in Nigeria, it's because the primary health care of the local government has failed. And you ask why? Financing. The truth of the matter is that the issues of restructuring cannot stop at the states. The larger proportion of restructuring must start from the local government. Okay. And until that is done, we may not be able to move forward. We'll just run in circles as a country.
Every structure of a building, for instance, must have a foundation. The foundation for this country starts and begins, of course, or ends with local government. Because this is where you have the most populous citizens of this country domiciling. Unfortunately, quote and unquote, intimidation, bringing down all that has to do with local government has always been the bane of what I have experienced in the last 5 years of my stay as chairman of a council. And we can't get it right if we try to, forget that local government is where the foundation has to start. And it is the local government that is being intimidated. It is the local government that they don't want it to function. So where do we start? So if you are talking of restructuring should be an all-inclusive thing. It should start from the local government.
But the funds that are allocated to states are being mismanaged. It doesn't trickle down to nothing. And I think it will be just being rather academic to consider that the proper thing to do is to give the states more financial prowess. We must be very tactful at this moment in time to ensure that we don't create structures, the strictures of our governance that will give people the opportunity to begin to mismanage funds or run the state of government affairs in the manner they want. Again, it must be pointed out that if we are now to look at it from a very proper perspective, as it is, the idea of restructuring is a function of which the National Assembly can expend their ideals, their debates on.
Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for the excerpts from yesterday's conversation in part one of our discussion on restructuring matters arising. Today we have another set of guests with us here in the Abuja studios. We'd like to first welcome Honorable Nimi Walsin Jack. He's a lawyer. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and joining us from Osogbo, that's the capital of Osun State, via Zoom, is distinguished Senator Surajuddin Ajibola. He's Chairman, Senate Committee on Media. Thank you for joining us, distinguished Senator.
Good morning.
And also joining us from our Kaduna studio is Yunus Ustaz Usman. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us from Kaduna. Good
Morning.
All right, gentlemen, once again, our pleasure to have you with us on the program. Let's begin with Senator Ajibola, who is with us via Zoom. The connection is pretty good at this moment. Distinguished Senator, we have heard the different perspectives on what restructuring means. Some would say it is fiscal, that's to say related to revenue and money matters. Others would say, yes, it is political. And some others have even gone ahead to suggest that it could also, in fact, affect the current nature and structure of the country's administrative units. What is your perspective on what restructuring is all about? And therefore, what can we pick out and probably achieve in the shortest possible time in order to address the growing decibel of agitations?
Is to start with what is the purpose of governance and whether the existing structure has been able to achieve that structure of governance. By under the existing constitution, section 14, subsection 2, paragraph C, says that the primary purpose of government is security and welfare of the people. As of today, it is not debatable that the country is challenged, not only in terms of provision of security, but also in terms of welfare of the people. The question is, how do we approach this issue of ensuring we have a government that is capable of delivering on these very vital needs of governance? One, I would say, without any fear of equivocation, that the founding fathers of the country decided solemnly at various conferences held in London, Lancaster, and everywhere to adopt a federal system of government. But unfortunately, since the incursion of the military in 1966 and solidified by the 1979 Constitution and subsequent constitutional efforts, what we have rather seen is that we have a unitary system parading in name as a federal structure. This manifestation is such that practically all matters, all decisions are taken at the national level. But the whole essence of federalism is to allow for the heterogeneous society to be able to have some measure of autonomy in terms of their economic, social and cultural advancement. This became very manifest in the First Republic, when there was really indeed a federal constitution, whereby even the region have their own constitution, and except for enumerated matters which were not as long as what we have under the present exclusive legislative list with about 66 items, you have the region developing at their own pace, deriving on their own initiative. As it was today, apart from the subject matter given in terms of legislative and legislative competence to the national legislature, which appear to be pervasive, we have also seen a balkanization of the so-called federative unit. Hardly will any of the 36 structure plus the FCT be able to sustain governance as is expected and as required. So I would say that my own idea of restructuring is to first look at even the structure of governance in terms of the viability and the conducive nature of the existing 36 structure towards ensuring federalism and ensuring heterogeneity of our society reflecting, and also looking at the rather humongous structure of legislative competence. When you look at a legislative list, you have about 66 items, including even such modest things as marriage, copyright, and so on and so forth. Then on the concurrent legislative list, you have another 32 items bifurcated into areas of federal competence and state competence. And you also have the court decisions, which I believe of dubious facility or of dubious validity of applying doctrine of covering defeat to even further expand the legislative and legislative competence of the federal government. Then at the resource level, you have a situation whereby 52% at least goes to a level of government, that's the federal government, and the state government, 36 plus FCT, are left to share less than about 26% of national revenue. You also have a gradual erosion of even the principle of autonomy in terms of derivation and in terms of utilization of their creative ingenuity to be able to raise resources. You look, for instance, the crisis we have about mineral resources and the question of gold, mining in Zamfara, and it's also rearing its ugly head in my dear state, Osun, as to the appropriation of almost all areas where resources could be harnessed for development by the federal government, with the challenge of the bureaucracy being too expansive and being incapable to be able to attend these challenges. Then in the area of security, how do you deal with a unitarized police system having at the most 5,460 police formation to take care of 200 million Nigerians with an expanse of land as huge as we have in this country here? So we need to think out of the box. Various challenges that we are confronted, and some of us who are comfortable with the present arrangement should also be challenged by the tensions already on ground, on the need for us to readdress the way we are governing ourselves, the cost of governance, the structure of governance, and making governance amenable to the realization of the goal of security and welfare of our people.
All right. Thank you, Senator Surajuddin Ajibola, for your opening remarks. Let me also, since we are on the Zoom, let me go to Kaduna studio and get Yunus Ustaz Usman, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Your perspective. The Senator has given us his own personal perspective to what restructuring is. Maybe we could look at it from the legal perspective as well.
Thank you very much. I've listened carefully to the distinguished senator. You see, one of the greatest mistakes we are making is that we think that restructuring will only come by gathering everybody together at the center to tinker out some provisions of the Constitution or debate endlessly. No, that is not. Restructuring can be done by the inbuilt constitutional provisions itself. For instance, Section 214, subsections 1 and 2, and then subsection 215, subsection 3, that provides for the establishment of the Nigerian police force that must be a federal institution, can be devolved to say the states will have power to create their own police with a view to curbing the insecurity we have today. But that must be done with caution, so that the states, some of the states won't use it to fight against the federal government police or federal government security system. And the way it is to be done is simply this. You give a proviso that in case of any conflict between the provisions of the state laws regarding the establishment of their police force units and the federal should prevail. Then, one of the greatest mistakes, particularly what I hear from some senior citizens with the greatest respect at my command, is that we try to say restructure, you say Buhari restructure. But Buhari has no power to restructure except we are not reading our constitution. Look, the power to amend the constitution is given to a National Assembly under Section 9, subsection 1 and 2. Buhari has no power there. In fact, we still have a case at the Court of Appeal where I said even the president has no power to sign the constitutional amendment if the National Assembly and the state assemblies have made the amendment. That is still at the Court of Appeal, Lagos Division. But everybody, including those we expect with respect to know, are saying Buhari restructure. Buhari has no power of restructuring. You are misdirecting your channel at a wrong target. Section 9 gives the National Assembly. So if you have anything to do, anything you want to be done to the Constitution, to amend the Constitution, which is what everybody, whether we hide it or not, is what everybody is saying, please apply to your representatives at the National Assembly. And in any case, most of our governors are not even willing for what we call restructuring. For instance, Buhari has issued 3 key executive orders. Executive Order 10, saying, look, state governors must comply with the judicial financial independence. Until yesterday evening, when I heard on the NTA network news that the governor say, yes, they will now do it, but gave a rider that's subject to some legal impediments. There is no legal impediment under the Constitution. There is no legal impediment under Section 121, subsection 2 and 3 of the Constitution. It says directly, whatever money belongs to the judiciary must be given directly to the heads of court. The same Section 1213 says whatever money belongs to the houses of assembly must be given to them directly. So there is no impediment. If we are talking of impediment, then that is political impediment, not legal impediment. So, but the irony of it is that everybody is saying, Buhari has not done. Blame your governors first. The governors are not ready for restructuring. Even the state houses of assembly, unfortunately, well, when this order was given, some of them were saying, no, we are satisfied. Local government, Buhari said local government must have the autonomy. Most of the local governments are gone. Local government, this thing, say we don't want. I've never seen a situation where if I'm a slave and my master says I'm giving you freedom today, I'll say, no, I'm not ready to go. Look at these things. Blame the appropriate person. Then throw your targets at the appropriate quarters. Bring your grievances to the appropriate quarters, which is your representatives, that is the legislative houses. We are all reading the Constitution upside down. Let us stop that. I'm not saying that there is no need for restructuring. Of course, there is the need, because restructuring brings the government closer to the people. But you must do it properly. I agree with the distinguished senator who said most of the states cannot even pay salaries. Yes, it's true. And I've always said, I have a memo for the constitutional amendment that, look, these 36 states are no longer viable. Please make the 6 zones as states, because they cannot even fend for themselves. But then it has to be done through the legal leeways as provided in the Constitution. Let us not deceive Nigerians by saying the executive. Executive has no power to even tinker with any provision of the Constitution. That is the law, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Leonard Senior Advocate Yunus Ustaz Usman. We'll return to you. At least you're on the same page in several respects with Senator Ajibola himself. But let's come back to Abuja Studios. Honorable Nimi Wasinjak. Well, while asking you to give us your pitch on what restructuring should entail, perhaps you might also take this along. Some view it now as seeking to switch from unitarism, that is a unitary system of government that the country has virtually operated since 1966, to a true federal structure back to what we had in the 50s up until the collapse of the First Republic.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think we have gone to the point where everything is mixed up. And I associate largely with what Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Ustaz, has said. And the point is that restructuring has come to mean many things. In fact, it has become a generic term for discontent, reaction to injustice, changes, expected changes in administration. In other words, people are looking forward to a new way of governance, if you like, a new way of doing things. But the reality of the situation is that everything is in the hands of the government, executive arm, the judiciary, and the legislature. Everybody has a role. So one is a bit uncomfortable when members of the National Assembly join in the call for restructuring, reorganization, or reform. No, they can't be here to be speaking. It is we out of government that should be speaking, because they hold the key to the reforms we are talking about. Just take a few instances. President Buhari did not give judicial autonomy or local government autonomy. It's already in the Constitution. All the president did was to bring out an executive order. An executive order is not a law. It is the administrative procedure steps that he wants his government to take to enforce an existing law. And he said it, and the same people who are asking for restructuring in certain area were up in arms. It was not a presidential matter. It was enforcing a constitutional provision, which till date, state governors and state legislatures are not enforcing. Exclusive legislative list can only be amended by the National Assembly and the state, 2/3 of the state houses of assembly. It doesn't need me. And so any legislature who thinks that the list, legislator and colleagues who think that the list is too large, should come up with the relevant short list for federal functions and then perhaps a longer list for concurrent and residual for states. Nobody has come up with a list in the National Assembly for it to be taken around to the states. So the point is, yes, there is a need for change, there is need for reform, there is need for redesigning governance, but people are shying away from their responsibilities and throwing it into the court of public opinion. Reforming governance is not like washing a car. You can open the doors of a car, wash in and out, and in 2 hours everything looks new and you drive off. No, you can't shut down governance or government at federal and state level to put things in order. You will be governing while putting things in order. And that is, so reform has its constitutional aspect. It has changes that may need to be made to the law, which may just be a National Assembly matter. It doesn't have to go to the states. Reform can come about through judicial pronouncements. They say it, and that is the position, the way it should be. And of course, the executive can decide. Take the Orosanya report. Orosanya was an executive arm committee. It says, look, our government is unwieldy. We should bring it down. In other words, we should restructure the federal government. That's what it said. And the federal government accepted. Both the past government and the present government says the report will be implemented. In other words, the report is saying that we will restructure the way we do business. Now, it is possible, therefore, that the federal government on its own will decide that, no, we no longer want to take responsibility, let's say for agriculture. So we play down everything about agriculture. Here is an executive bill. National Assembly, please take agriculture to remove it from the exclusive list. We want to let the states deal with agriculture. That is can come from the executive, and we don't have to convene a 1,000-member assembly to sit down in a stadium to decide whether we should govern A or B. That's the point you're making. So, yes, we should change, but please, people should live up to their responsibilities. If you have been elected, do the work for which you have been elected. If you've been appointed into an office, follow the laws that establish your organization or institution and deliver service, and people will not complain. Some of the changes have nothing to do with law, constitution, or otherwise. It's a human problem. It's a human problem. And we have a big problem with what you call citizens. And some of us have argued that there are very few citizens. The non-citizens, when I say non-citizens, I mean Nigerians who don't act as citizens have overwhelmed the real people who want to act as citizens. Federal character, for example, appointments and the rest of them, whether political appointments or pensionable appointments, are made by human beings at various levels. And these human beings have guidelines. The rules of the public service are clear. The laws establishing your organizations are clear, so your mandate. But people sit down at board meetings and do things contrary to public service rules and to their own to the law establishing their own organization. In this Abuja, a federal government establishment quarreled with another federal government establishment. And when the attention of one organization was drawn to the fact that what they have just done was against the public service rules, an appointed public officer stated that his organization, a federal government institution, was not governed by the public service rules. And then when another organization, the chairperson of another organization spoke, another federal government agency used gutter language. Are those constitutional matters? Those are things which individuals will just do the right thing in the interest of the greater majority of the people you are serving. And justice will be done, people will be satisfied, and if they're not satisfied, they believe that changes could be done. But when there's impunity all the way, then poor people have no alternative than to begin to demand for the type of changes that are difficult to come by.
Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead,
go ahead.
Kingsley.
No, I was just wondering. Honorable Nimi, you've made a number of very interesting points. Try to get our focus on what should be done and the responsibility for both the citizens and then those who already have the institutional authority to also get this done. But it is useful, I believe, that for those institutions that ordinarily could get it, let's say the National Assembly or even the executive arm, it is useful for them to hear from the citizens because they are not going to legislate for themselves. For them to have, as it were, a bouquet of demands to say, look, these are the items we want to address. These are the issues that hurt us at the moment. And as you also rightly observed, virtually everything now is on the plate for restructuring. But it is useful, I believe, for them to hear and say, listen, this is the way to go. I mean, the other two guests have talked about an issue that we already know about, namely the unviability of most of the administrative units of the country today. That's to say the states. How many of the states are viable? And I asked the question earlier, if you recall, that are we not going to, are we not restructuring, shifting from unitarism that gave us a great deal of these items that we are grappling with today? Or it was under the military that you started having states being created at will. I mean, the only state, the only region that has been created by plebiscite was the Midwestern region in 1963. And then from 4 regions, suddenly you had 12 states, 12 became 19, 21, 30, 36. Each of these ones, they have their own bureaucracies, they have their own legislature, all kinds of cost centers that are not economically viable. Is it possible to get this into the restructuring agenda? And how tough might it be to say, look, gentlemen, we think that these 36 states are no longer viable. Could we, if you like, recollapse into, say, 12 or 6, such as Eunice Ustaz SAN was saying earlier?
All right. I think the part of the problem is the generation that knew Moses want to dictate to the present generation that only read about Moses in the history books. When you talk of unitary government, how many Nigerians experience unitary government as of today? Take MKA Abiola, a recent incident in my own lifetime, change of name. The people who protested against the change of the name of the institution were people who were just kids when Abiola died. So when you talk about unity, you romanticize unitary government, it will have its advantages, merits in the history books. How many Nigerians today understand this, how to operate a unitary government? The parliamentary system that we inherited at independence, how many of us living today know how to operate that system, apart from what we watch on British Parliament television? The presidential system that came in when we had become adults, we studied in school, and we are now to practice. We can't practice. We can't deliver on it. It's obvious. So now people are asking that we should go back to a system that we did not even study. We are just being told that that's what it used to be. And then how many federations in the world have failed because they practice federalism and not unitary system of government? So this idea of holding on to, putting the blame on something can't work. You have a system. Study and practice that system. Make amendments and corrections as you go along, and you will perfect the system. Now, as to state creations and development, anybody who argues that state creation has not aided development is not being fair. Specifically, I knew when Imo State was created. I knew when Benue State was created. I knew when Bayelsa State was created. Owerri, Makurdi, Yenagoa were villages. They were not cities. Today, they wear a different look. I say thanks to state creation. The discussion yesterday highlighted the fact that there are parts of this country where people have not voted. In other words, it's saying that there are parts of this country that there has been no road network, no sea transportation, no electricity, no pipe-borne water. There are. Those people may not see development until either we give them a local government of their own, or perhaps one day they will have a state government closer to them. So it has nothing to do, our present situation has nothing to do with creation of states. In fact, creation of states has opened up the opportunities for development. It has given us the capacity to develop more leaders. It has given even leaders, citizens and leaders greater opportunity at governance. So yes, instead of 20 legislators for a formal, say, East Central state, today you have the Eastern states and some of the South states combine their legislators who have more opportunities. This is elementary science. But with due respect, if the people cannot govern themselves financially, the federal government cannot be blamed. There are many countries in this world, we don't need to name them. There are many countries in this world that don't have oil. They don't have any mineral you can boast of. But just because perhaps maybe they have the seashores, they are thriving in one form of tourism or the other and raking in income. Some people are just a hub for others. So every state, all it takes therefore is that people then have to now decide who do we bring to govern. I was a young person when the election of 1979, Awolowo, Zik, Shagari was held. Political rallies were not about dancing. Political rallies were for explanation of policies. And political rallies were open to non-party members. We used to attend. We heard that Awolowo was coming to a city. We used to attend. Or Shagari was coming. And they will address you on economic issues, what they want to do to improve the lives of people. Today we go to political rallies and we vote for the person who smiles best, who dances better than the other, and then we turn around and expect that the economy will be improved by a man who had never managed a budget of 10 million naira, and suddenly he has 15 billion naira to manage, and we expect him to perform miracle. We're demanding too much. So I think the state creation is not to blame. Rather, we need to improve our capacity in governance, and we, the voters, also have to change the criteria, the parameters for electing leaders.
And that will take me, thank you, Honorable Nimi Wilson-Jack. That will take me to my next question, indeed, which you have preempted, of course, with your last remarks. Senator Surajuddin Ajibola, given the generic nature of restructuring and, of course, the multifaceted items that people are asking at the moment, is that really the problem? Is that really our problem? Or is it appreciable, quantifiable, and quality governance?
It cannot have quantifiable government without having a proper arrangement for governance. And I say this with all sense of responsibility for those that have said that appear from the two previous commentators that National Assembly is passing buck. It's unfortunate that possibly many of our people who have concern for governance don't even follow up on development. Next week, that is Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, there will be SONA hearings all over the country on constitutional amendment, and the enumerated subject matter include, among others, those of the things that have been enumerated in this place. And that includes issue of federal structure and governance and power devolution, local government administration and local government autonomy, public revenue, fiscal federalism, revenue allocation, constitutional provision for the establishment of state police, judicial reform, adjudication of election petition, and so on and so forth. These have been published in national dailies, and the public hearing will be held. And to talk about insulation of the president from the process of constitutional amendment, I beg to differ with learned senior advocate of Nigeria, and who has also, I think, incidentally served as Attorney General, just as I've done. The role of executive in shaping and reforming law cannot be overemphasized. I've served as Attorney General in my state, and I know that the executive also have a role to initiate legislation for reform. Section 9 of the Constitution on Constitutional Amendment does not insulate stimulate and does not take away the executive from also initiating processes for constitutional amendment. That is not to say that presently the National Assembly is not embarking on aggressive efforts to ensure that the country is carried along in constitutional reform, efforts, and that can be seen in the SONA hearing that will be holding across almost all the states of the Federation on Wednesday and Thursday of next week. But then there are two ways by which bills are initiated in the National Assembly and any state legislator in Nigeria. One is by way of executive bill, and the other by way of private member bill. I'm talking for myself. I know I've also introduced private member bill in the area that touches on restructuring. One, in the area of state police. I think one of my other distinguished colleagues, Senator Eke Ekweremadu, has also introduced a bill. Then on the area of reform of judiciary, along making sure expedition of cases, bills have also been introduced. So I will expect us as Nigerians to take active interest in participating at the zonal hearings holding across the various state of the Federation on Wednesday and Thursday. And I'm happy to hear that Landed Senior Advocate has submitted a bill, a memorandum to the Constitutional Review Committee, which I believe will also be part of what will be considered at the various zonal hearing. The process of constitutional making is a more embracing political and legislative process than mere making of national legislation. Then with also respect, I also take exception to what I would call the basing of the political actors and political participants here, talking about somebody who has not managed 10 million, asking to be able to do things and so billions of naira. I take a challenge. On the website of the National Assembly are the resume of people who are in the National Assembly. Some people have track record, and we chose to participate in political process not because we are hungry or we are looking for job. And I know that professionally I've had cause to even engage in processes involving the Landed Senior Advocate that is also on this panel. So it's also not good, it's not conducive for attraction of people who are genuinely committed to our democratic advancement to debase the entire political process. Every processes have their own challenges, but until we attract the best of the best who are patriotic, who are willing to leave the comfort of private engagement and private business to engage in the public space. And as Plato said, the highest calling is actually public calling. So if people are making a general banalization of our political process, it's not conducive for development of a robust engagement of people who are well-meaning and ready to take the gauntlet to support our political process. Then I will also say that we cannot also insulate the civil society, non-governmental organization, and the public for all of us to work together to ensure we have a very adequate provision of governance in the country. It is a demand and supply situation. The question of having qualitative governance can also not be insulated from a political process where those who have the ultimate decision of picking the leaders choose to pick the leaders on the basis of primordial sentiment, on the basis of financial inducement, and on the basis of pure sentiment, rather than looking at the credentials and the commitment of those who have brought themselves forward for representation. So it is an all-embracing process which I believe we must also look at the structure of governance. On the question of creation of the states, the thing is that it's not development is not just about about villages coming to cities. There are also human aspects of development, employment generation, productivity engagement of the people, welfare of the people in terms of social investment in education, in healthcare, and also in having a prospective generation that can compete favorably in a rather globalized world. With the present challenges that we have of expenditure on governance, expenditure on even running the process of governance, outstripping the investment in the area of capital investment, we all of us must come together to be able to do so. So at the level of the National Assembly, I say with all sense of responsibility that we are actively pursuing process of constitutional amendment. We have also made beneficial legislation in the present National Assembly that address issue of economic reform and addressing the question of how we tinker with the existing imbalance in the economic structure of the country. Of fundamental importance to note is that we have been able to ensure that public expenditure is tied to development. But then the challenges are still there. Presently, we have a situation whereby unless we look closely at the cost of governance, it will be at the expense of being able to deliver on the most needed capital investment that we have. And looking at the 2021 budget, for instance, you have a situation whereby about 5.9 billion is appropriated for the current and the current expenditure, about 3 billion also going into servicing debt, leaving just about 4-point-something billion for capital investment. So the question of structure of governance is also germane, and it is a gradual process to ensure that we're able to get the balance in favor of capital investment, which in the long run will be able to support the new development of the people, create necessary job outside the civil service job, and the new productive engagement of our people that will also assist in the area of addressing the problem of insecurity. At the idle's hand, they say it's a devil's workshop. So it's an holistic challenges, and the buck must not stop with us. Yes, we have a very huge responsibility, having been elected, having sworn to uphold the Constitution, and having committed ourselves to uphold that particular purpose of governance, which is security and welfare of the people. And of course, on the issue of the state police, I believe definitely we cannot continue on the unitarized police structure in Nigeria. Yet there will be challenges, and everywhere in the world, there are also the challenges of the abuse of power. In fact, as far back as 13th, 14th century, in English cases like Antic and Carrington, there have been issues about how do you ensure that people who are given coercive power don't use same to the treatment of people, particularly those in opposition. But on the balance of scale, you cannot say because there's propensity for possible abuse, they will throw the whole benefit of having a well-secured environment that would be given to us by a decentralized police structure. In fact, as a mid-gap, I've also introduced a bill to say that the existing Nigerian police structure should be decentralized along zonal line, so that you have, for instance, 2 or 3 states within a particular zonal command that will be able to be budgetarily and operationally be autonomous, and then have zonal advisory council, which will comprise of stakeholders, not only elected representatives, but community leaders, religious leaders, and other stakeholders in those zones and society. So it's a whole debate, a whole engagement that will continue, and ensuring that we're even talking about this means that we are making some progress in the advancement of our society.
All right. No, we'll pause and then ask you to respond, because Yunus Ustaz Usman, senior advocate, is in Kaduna, and he may wish also to respond to some of the points that you have made, as well as, of course, what Senator Ajibola has just said. Leonard, senior advocate, if you wish to respond to the matters arising from their comments, that's fine. But I would also like you to take this along. Now, the argument has been, as you have said, and Senator Ajibola on the one hand talks about the unviability of the current administrative units of the Federation, namely 36 states of the Federation. And you said, look, let's collapse them into 6. But there's also the counter-argument that the federal government at the moment has too large a chunk of the revenue, some 52-point-something%. Is it possible that if some of that revenue, that percentage, were to be taken to the states for their governance purposes, that those entities, which we now refer to as unviable, could then become viable?
You see, it is a good suggestion. But then our people say that A chicken that will grow into a cockerel is always determined from the day it is hatched. If the state governors are already not allowing the local governments, which is the basis to exist financially, most of them are confiscating the allocations that are meant for them and even pocketing the state legislatures, because as we speak now, quote me, most of the state legislatures are not even functioning as state legislators. It is what the governor wants them to do that they do. In such a case, even if you give them more money, the governors will not allow these things to flow, to come to the grassroots. You see, the basic way of getting resources to the grassroots is through the local government and the state legislative houses. But these ones have been hampered, have been tampered with, to the extent that the president had to give an executive order that, look, allow these people to have their allocations directly so that they can get closer to the people and function well. It is not a bad thing if the constitutional amendment being thought of now by the distinguished senator and the rest, so we think about the revenue allocation formula. That is not the problem. But the problem will be that how do you ensure that even the state governors will manage them for the states? For instance, Sir Edwin Clark, the man I respect so much, yesterday said, look, the allocations given to our state, the South-South, were given to the governors because there was no provision then that it should be given to an organization that could manage it properly. And that the governors confiscated these things without having any evidence to show that these things were utilized for the states. I have no quarrel if it is tinkered with, but then how do we, and my question is directly, sir, to the distinguished senator, who is my learned brother, how do you ensure that the state governors, state governors, and quote me anyway, I'm an old man, state governors are the ones not helping this country? It is not, we blame federal, without thinking of where the problems start. The problems of the collapsing building start from the structure. We are not looking at these things genuinely. Most of our governors should act with respect, statesmanly, and know, I warn, and know that if you misuse a kobo not meant for you, buy a karakose for your children, wallahi, those children will be destroyed in your presence.
Sekusman, thank you very much for your contribution. Gentlemen, Honorable Nimi Wasanjak, you give us your response when we come back from this very short break. Please do bear with us. You're watching Good Morning Nigerian Network Service. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on NTA's network service. Now let's come back to Honorable Nimi Wasanjak, who was reaching to respond to the submissions by the other two guests.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I know that our time is limited, but let me just say this. Democracy is a marketplace of ideas. Frank discussions are necessary and important. Now, when we tell ourselves the truth, let's not misinterpret it. There is no attempt whatsoever to debase the political class or political institutions. I have been in politics since 1988. And we just have to tell ourselves the truth that the legislature is not sitting up to its responsibilities. Two, the ongoing constitutional, public hearing on constitutional review is unnecessary. That's my position. And as far back as 1979, Rotimi Williams and the Wise Men, they gave us the 99 Constitution, two documents. 79. The Rotimi Williams report, the Constitution, 79. Since then, 88, we held one. Along the way, I can't remember all the years, but up to 2000 and under President Jonathan, we held another one. So there are enough documents. And in this era of social media, Singapore held a review that did not require any human being meeting, online. Committees monitored reports and made necessary amendments and what they wanted to do. So if you want to know what Nigerians think or feel or what they want, read existing reports. Take the media along with you. You will have proposals. You see, these are time-wasting measures. By the time we are through with this constitutional review public hearing, we will enter the election season. And we'll be back to square one. So, with due respect, National Assembly, you're doing your job, but we could do this thing faster. And this thing can also be done by taking one problem sector at a time. You may not be able to review the whole constitution. Take the issues. Okay, give yourself the simple assignment of whittling down the exclusive legislative list. Work with your reference report. See where federal government is not interested. And let us give those powers to the states, at least to start working. It's only when you give states powers that you can talk of giving them more money. Otherwise, it will be a waste. I was a young man. I saw 1.5% to oil-producing states. We begged for 3%. We didn't get it. President Babangida eventually ended up with the present constitution with 13%. Now, the question is, how many states in this country? I only know of about 2 who receive derivation funds, have a committee or a commission to administer that fund. It is treated like any other money to the general account. And the mineral-producing areas in those states are as backward as some of those villages referred to in yesterday's discussion. So let's stop this talk about money, money, money. No. Maybe if they want money, they should say so directly. But it's not that they are not succeeding because they don't have money. I go back to it that there are countries who don't have minerals who are succeeding. So any state, if we give them independence, if we give every state in Nigeria today a republic of its own, will they reject it because they don't have resources? They will not. So the same way they will function as a country, they should try to function as a state within the Federal Republic. And then we can make the amendments as we go along.
Honorable Nimi, thank you very much. Senator Ajibola, very briefly, I know that this is a matter that is ongoing, but Honorable Nimi has raised the point as to the utility of the public hearing in the zones. Couldn't the Senate, which has suspended plenary for next week, couldn't have deployed other mechanisms, such as, for instance, utilizing utilizing technology, asking for contributions, and more importantly, going through the wide variety of reports that we already have, reports and recommendations?
I think there's a fundamental assumption, with all respect to Mr. Adimi, that we have not looked at the constitutional efforts that I happen to be a member of the committee headed by Senator Kasim Shettima that look at the 2014 confirmed report on the ongoing exercise. Senator Kekwere Madu was the chairman of the committee that looked at all the previous efforts as constitutional amendments. Senator Smart Adeyemi was the chairman of the committee that looked at all the bills, either private or executive, on what has been going on presently on the constitutional amendment. There's also another committee that reviewed the El Rufai committee of the All Progressive Conference. So what he has said that we ought to do, we have actually done so. But in the political process, you cannot decountenance the public engagement of, and I will take a cue from what he has said. He was referring to previous efforts. At the same time, in his previous engagement, he has told us that generations are different. If a report that had been done some 50 years ago is just taken off the shelf and just applied, then talking about technology, I think we are not yet there technologically to take decisions for our people. I'm a politician from Osun Central. I traveled to 2 hours journey to Ora yesterday. There was no even network service for almost 4 hours that I was there. So when you talk of technology, maybe we talk that we are only ruling people who are the elite who stay in our urban center. That is not the way to say it. So the public engagement of the people is part of the political process, and the whole process is thrown open such that new ideas, fresh ideas, apart from what had occurred in the previous efforts, are put in place. And we're talking about 2-day public hearing. How would a 2-day public hearing delay the process and conclusion of such a process? I would say yes, while I appreciate the question of expeditious consideration of these issues, so that issues of constitutional amendment would have been put behind our back before we talk about next election. We cannot decountenance in the political process the public engagement of the people in a direct manner, and then only limiting the choice for the elite who have access to all these technological gadgets that we are using.
All right, distinguished senator, thank you very much there for your explanation. I just wanted to clear, you and I were on set last week when we had amongst our guests the governor of Plateau State and the governor of Ondo State. And we're talking about one of the ways to also fast-track the issue of constitutional amendment, to say, look, there are reports all over the place. Couldn't you get the secretary to the government of the federation and the SSGs of the various states to look over this, to look through these documents, and then just come up with a distillation of the issues, not more than 2 pages. Distinguished Senator, you have said that you have various committees that have worked on this, and that now you are going to open up the conversations again. It might have been helpful, if you ask me, for you to have, for your purposes of public engagement, an aid memoir to say, look, we have gone through all the documents, these are the issues that we distilled from them, 2 pages or 2 copies, so that when I come to your public hearing, I am not seeking to introduce a matter which is already there on the paper. I can just tailor myself to it. If I have a fresh idea, a different point. All right, so gentlemen, we'd like to thank you once again. This is an ongoing matter, and we hope to return to it at some point. Senator Surajuddin Ajibola, who is the head of the chair of the Senate Committee on Media, we appreciate your being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. You joined us via Zoom from Oshogbo. From Kaduna, we're joined by senior advocate Yunusa Ustaz Usman. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. And here with us in the Abuja studios with his provocative ideas and very, very interesting, Honorable Nimi Wasinjak. Thank you very much for being part of Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be taking on our second topic, which has to do with safer roads.